Welcome to episode number 8 of the InnerTuning podcast. My name is Richard Matisaw. InnerTuning is a practical system for spiritual and psychological well-being. It was created by Sri Shyamji Bhatnagar and based on his discovery of the Microchakras, which are 147 stages of human awareness from complete ignorance all the way to master of Namji. Visit the website chakrainstitute.com. In today's episode, we will talk about altered states of awareness. So today we will go through the 7 chakras and speak with Sri Shyamji about various intoxicants and how they relate to the different energy centers, coupled with how they influence our states of awareness. This episode intends to help answer some common questions, like why certain people are attracted to different substances and not attracted to others, and how sound, silence, and meditation impact the highest states of awareness. So to start, let's go to the first chakra. Sri Shyamji, could you explain the intoxicant associated with the first chakra?
Intoxicant of the first chakra is needed by those people who don't feel good about their body, who don't really approve of living in this body. So in order to tolerate the mind of the first chakra, which is that I am this physical body, they are uncomfortable with it. So what they do is they put an end to the emotional pain by taking opium or its derivatives. The worst of that being heroin. Maybe there are more things. There are many people who have difficulty with the second chakra mind. They don't accept their own gender identity or sexuality. And then they have to take alcohol so that the second chakra mind can get more activated and they can feel their own body's passion. The third chakra mind, which is a rational mind, and when they see that there is a lack of focus, then they are attracted to things like caffeine. But by caffeine, I don't mean just a cup of coffee a day. Caffeine addiction is every 90 minutes or so, you need a cup of coffee. And when that doesn't work, then they go towards cocaine, because that gives them a focus, and they can accomplish a great deal when they are focused. So these 3 intoxicants are most popular in the society. But then there are other people who really don't understand what love is about. They know that people love their bodies, they can love their mate, they can love their religions or community, but they don't really know the nature of love. So then they go to the 4th chakra, intoxicants. And in some cultures they are used as a device to get away from the lower 3 chakra minds, which means they want to get into an altered state to be able to feel something different from the 3rd chakra, which is your social identity, your 2nd chakra, your gender identity. I had a therapist who was working with a man. He couldn't get him to recognize his own gender. Years and years of therapy. And I gave him some tips, of course, and some sounds that helped him actually. So people who are not aware of this altered state, the state of love, not becoming a loving being, love as a state, which is a greater concern for a greater cause. That is a state. It's not individualized as much, but it's like you can give up your life for a larger cause. That is the state of love.
So which intoxicants are assisting getting into that state?
Yes. So traditionally in America, peyote was used in America among American Indians, and some forms of mushrooms that have a little toxic effect, but it puts you in an altered state. And ayahuasca is another one that's quite popular these days. And sometimes people take, in India, a drink made up with cannabis indica. It's a cannabis, but it is digestible cannabis, not smokable. Smokable is cannabis sativa. This is cannabis indica, which means that when you digest it, it slowly makes you feel very mellow, and you gradually start to feel that love that you can't feel in a normal state.
Is psilocybin part of this one too?
Psilocybin is a derivant from these natural plants. So is mescaline. So is Adam. All those things are the scientific versions where they don't take the plant but the essence of it. So I talk about the natural plants, not the derivatives. Like, for example, from the seed of rye, they created LSD. But, origin is again in the plant world. So I am more familiar with the plant world, although I have read and I know some people personally who have taught me about the synthetic version of these plants that you are referring to. So, when you go to the fifth chakra is where your sound sensitivity gets very enhanced. And many people learn to relax in the beginning when they take this, it's called ganja in India, and here it is called marijuana. It's a smokable, so to speak. There is an edible version of it, but it's a smokable version. So that puts you in a state where you begin to hear akasha. Akasha is the effect of sound. In Naada Yoga, we focus on creating that altered state with the sounds. Sounds of chakras or mantras or different compositions with different rhythms. So, because fifth chakra is very knowledge oriented, it wants you to know yourself, not your faculties, not your powers, but you. You become more interested in knowing who you are. So it puts you in that state where you can take a distance from everything that you do in everyday life. So they smoke and they just become very, very accepting of themselves in a quiet, unexcited environment.
How do these things like psilocybin and marijuana impact the subtle body?
Well, they get you kind of, it's just like when you have an aid and you get addicted to the aid, then it beats the purpose. If you had gone there on your own, with your own spiritual practices, which are available in India, but then everybody does not have access to those practices. So then they don't get into the altered state, but they want to enter into an altered state. So that's why these plants become more and more popular, and then the synthetic version of them called the drugs. But there are natural ways to be able to do that. Like I was giving you the example of that man who could not leave the identity of his physical body. There was a woman also I had heard about from a psychoanalyst I knew, who will not accept man penetrating. She would talk to them, she will be with them, she'll enjoy sense of humor, parties, but she refused any man to come and invade her privacy. In other words, she did not accept the mind of her own second chakra. She was just content with the first chakra mind. I am this body, and this is what my body is able to do. She was happy with that.
So can I ask a question, see if I understand this? So in a summary form, if I'm understanding, the intoxicants for the first three chakras aren't necessarily creating altered states. When we get to the fourth chakra and start talking about ayahuasca, psilocybin, peyote, and then we get to the fifth chakra and we start talking about marijuana, we start getting into altered states that can bring us into a state, sort of like a second linga state. Is that correct?
Exactly. Fourth and fifth chakras are in the second linga, and all the drugs can do is to open up your heart chakra mind for a while or fifth chakra mind for a while. But then you get addicted to it because you can't keep it open. You see? And the idea is to, at the snail pace, you go there. Then it becomes part of your personality. You don't have to depend on any drug or any plant.
And is that what leads to the third linga, where there aren't intoxicants when you start talking about the sixth chakra and the seventh chakra?
Well, sixth and seventh chakras get activated with the stronger drugs like LSD or STP, or there are other drugs that were popular at one time, DMT, dimethyltryptamine. So those are the things that then they reveal your shadow side. And then you can have some extraordinary experiences and some horrendous experiences. But that happens to people in meditations also if they do not develop the art of absorbing Surya Akasha, which is the effect of the most fine, sophisticated sound. Most people's ears are limited to just the fine music. Music does not do it. Music is sense pleasure, which is wonderful, but it does not take you to the Surya Akasha that your own voice can create if you have a good voice.
So, speaking about the sixth chakra, is it correct to say that this is where working with sound and absorbing Surya Akash, this is where using supplemental intoxicants gets transcended in a way?
It will provided you will follow the protocol, because Surya Akasha is very much like ozone. It will stay with you like for 10 minutes. But then you are, it has been absorbed as much as you were capable to absorb it. The art is in retaining it. I have done workshops on how to retain Surya Akasha and plan to do more advanced work with sounds.
What is the general idea with that?
The general idea with that is that you can transcend the physical realms at will and get into an higher altered state on your own, which will be indicative in your rate of breathing. For example, a normal person may be breathing anywhere between, these days, anywhere between 20-25 breaths per minute. But with sitting quiet every day, gradually you can reach the level of the 4 breaths per minute. Your 6th chakra mind can get activated, provided you use the proper sounds to get there. Then you don't need to use the drugs. And that will be lasting. You see, the problem with the drugs is that they wear out. And when they wear out, there is a side effect. And the side effects are not pleasant. When you are under the influence of it, you may feel pleasant and euphoric and all kinds of nice feelings, But the after effect is something that's toxic. Then you have to do purifications. Actually, in a traditional setting, people used to prepare for it, like a day of fast and then bathing and wearing fresh clothes and waking up early in the morning, like 4:30 in the morning, when the energy is just still in the 7th chakra, and they watch it drop from the 7th to the 1st. And eventually there is a Kundalini darshan that takes place. Those are the spiritual practices that people have to be familiarized with. And then gradually they will work. You see, it all depends on your sense of devotion to your own altered states, leading to enlightenment. Most people reach the heart chakra level and they start to help other people become enlightened. It's a very individual matter. But you have to pay back your karmic debts before you will be allowed to enter into an altered state for your own spiritual growth.
And when you talk about that from the yoga tradition, are you talking about these states of samadhi?
Well, that gradually leads to the state of samadhi. When the energy is in the 6th chakra, you are having altered states and euphoric feelings and so on and so on. But as you go into the 7th chakra, there is no breath coming in, coming out. You're just there. You're in a state of complete union, just like you are in your deep sleep, except you are breathing pretty fast. But in the waking state, you can get there and not even be breathing.
And along the way, we are working with whatever intoxicants we're attracted to or whatever, so that we can overcome that desire, let go of the attraction to those things, and find the way to create that altered state ourselves. And your teachings and this work is helping us work with sound and silence and purification to expedite that path to the altered state of union. Is that a summary that makes sense?
It makes sense, but the most important part which you touched upon needs to be explained, which is purification. Every time you take anything toxic, whether it is coffee, whether it is some herbs that is helping you in some medical setting, medical condition, it has a side effect. And that side effect disturbs one of the most delicate apana prana, it's called. It's a wind which is supposed to detoxify your body. But when that gets intensified, it starts to affect the higher chakra pranas, I call it, which are more subtle. So to purify the prana called apana prana, other than the purification which I had to develop for some very seriously mentally compromised people. In fact, the daughter of a friend of mine who was a psychiatrist. And I have been making improvements on that purification. Every time we do a purification, we add something to it. But it does take about 5 days to really normalize the body so that your feelings are healthy and your thoughts are more pure. It does take about 5 days.
And if people are interested in those purifications, I can just add here, you can find information on the chakrainstitute.com website. They're happening more frequently now since they're offered remotely on Zoom, and they're still having really strong impact for people. So one question I have, Sri Shyamji, is as far as sounds go, if I'm somebody listening and I'm attracted to some of the substances that you've mentioned and I'm desiring to let go of some of that attraction, are there specific sounds in the library on the Chakra Institute website that you can point me to?
Adhyakshaya, Bajrang Bali, Brahma, Vishnu, Maheshwara. Those three are the important ones to work with on your own until you are able to get a purification. And if you and I can have a chance to meet and I can feel your spine and make a chart of your microchakras, then I can give you a sequence of sounds that you can do and change every 2-3 weeks or whatever I find at the time necessary that will work for you.
Thank you for that. In an earlier podcast, you mentioned back in the 60s you worked with some of the people that were experimenting with LSD and you were doing sound work. Can you explain a little bit about that and how sound might have provided similar experiences for those people or whatever the outcome was from those studies?
Oh yes, long ago. It was in 1965 when Pandit Ravi Shankar, the famous sitar player, when Beatles became his followers, he became very popular. So he called me up. I was in San Francisco. He says, I am playing in Carnegie Hall. Would you like to come and play tambura with me? And I was, I was excited. In 1965, I was like 30 years old, 29, 30. So I moved from San Francisco to New York. And after playing with him for 24 concerts, he went back. And I was in New York. I didn't know what to do then. So I met many people in the concerts. And of course, 2-3 people were from this psychedelic group from the Castelia Foundation in Millbrook, New York. Timothy Leary, Richard Alpert, and Ralph Metzner. Ralph became a good friend. And he said, why don't you come and spend some time in Millbrook and think what you want to really do. So I went there. It was probably in November. So the whole month of November and December I was there. And at the end of December I decided that maybe I should just go to India and contemplate in the place where I met my teacher when I was young, and did some pilgrimage and some energetic places where I sat. And boy, did I have some experience there. And my own teacher then instructed me. He says, go back to New York, play tambura and chant. That's all he said. And that's what I did. A year later, in 1967, the month of January, I came back. And been working with sound since. Gradually, more and more people started to come in my meditations. And then I started to work on the microchakras that I discovered working with people. So my students were my teachers who basically were instrumental in my discovering these microchakras, which was a result of tuning into an altered state. I would call that the 7th microchakra of the 5th in my central channel. And automatic writing took place for about 5 hours or so. And all 147 states of awareness, they just descended upon me. When I woke up at 8 o'clock in the morning on this little desk where I was sitting and my head was there on the yellow pad, when I read that stuff, I didn't even believe it, that I wrote it. It was like, a gift that came. Gradually, it, started to get more and more refined. And then I met David Isaacs, professor of cognitive psychology from Bridgeport, who then said that I will help you publish a book. And he said it will take him 2 years, but it took him 10. But finally it came out. Then in 2013, it was also translated in French. Now it's being translated in Spanish. So that is the story of how I met this psychedelic group, where I was doing the workshops on the weekends with sounds, and the following weekend they would do the workshop with LSD, with all kinds of different musics and so on. I never attended them because, I did actually 15-20 minutes each time, but they were just too loud for me, and I preferred to be a little bit more quiet. So I would just go in my room.
From the perspective of the microchakras, if I'm attracted to one of these intoxicants, would it show up as a blockage in a microchakra?
Exactly.
And from your experience, people that have come to you and worked with the sounds and worked purifications and had openings in those microchakras, their desire for that intoxicant disappeared? Or, is it that black and white?
No, gradually. Gradually it started to reduce the frequency as the sounds, the purity of sounds and the Surya Akasha created by the sounds started to register and absorbed. They gradually gave it up.
That's amazing.
One of the greatest singers in India I knew, who was hooked on alcohol. He lived with me for about 7-8 weeks in Princeton. He became totally clean. Another friend of mine, lifelong friend, he was hooked on alcohol, then he got hooked on smoking. And I helped him quite a bit, actually. He gave up the alcohol, but smoking was still something that he was not able to give up. So
I meant to ask you that. Which chakra is tobacco connected to?
Tobacco actually is a third chakra because it numbs your. You see, tobacco is what is it called? Nicotine, right? Nicotine is an anodyne. Anodyne means that it makes you numb to your emotional pain. So every 90 minutes, that surge comes in your stomach and you pull out a cigarette. That's when you are really dependent on nicotine. There are other people who, when they feel somewhat distressed, they will smoke a cigarette here and there. But they are not addicts of nicotine. They are not doing it for emotional pain, although it helps them in the emotional distress, even if they smoke one cigarette. Because the nature of the tobacco is that it's an anodyne, which means it makes you numb towards your own emotional pain.
So I'm trying to think this through a little bit as sort of on the journey to enlightenment. It seems like some of these things are beneficial tools to open up a window. And if we can realize through an altered state that that window was opened up to whatever, a higher feeling of love or a higher devotion to spiritual practice, or people just talk about healing through things like psilocybin or ayahuasca or waking up or something like that. Do you view these as stepping stones that can be beneficial for people as long as they can move beyond them?
For some time, the therapeutic aspect of these substances is okay because it will open a window. But don't jump out of the window by becoming an addict. That's the issue.
I had a question for you regarding addicts. I think you mentioned previously that when you were living in New York, a lot of the addicts ended up being your students. Can you explain that work a little bit?
Well, because I had saved some money and I was working for free with people in my 5-floor walk-up apartment in New York City in the West Village. And a lot of young people and old people in middle age, whatever problems they had, they would come. And my remedy was just to teach them how to keep their body pure by proper diet and cleansings, internal and external. People don't know how to clean their bodies, frankly. If they don't know how to clean the external body, how are they ever going to clean the internal? I mean, most people, they defecate and they wipe with the paper and they think they're clean. And they're not. Think again. All that bacteria is lingering all over your body within the matter of 1 hour. It's everywhere. So, some of these quick methods of cleaning, they are not really cleaning. They are wiping. There's a difference. So when people learn how to treat their body with respect, then the body respects you. Just like if I treat you with respect, you will respect me in return. So body is conscious. What you do to it registers. And that is true of every identity we have. Not just that I am this body, or I am this gender, or I am this teacher, or I am this cosmic lover, or I am the guru of the knowledge, or I am the expert in looking at my shadow side and tuning into the altered states to recognize all my hang-ups and everything and working on them, chiseling them out. They're all different stages of the mind that becomes more and more open as you get into that altered state. Every altered state has a message. Idea is to get the message and follow the instructions.
Thank you, Sri Shyamji. Would you be able to share a chant to close this episode, please?
Sadhu, 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 yeh tana ठाठ तंबूरे का साधो